Hi AP Econ students, Mr. Muller here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a third kind of firm that a lot of you are very familiar with. We're just putting terms to things you already know, and this is called monopolistic competition and the role of advertising. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's get started. So again, a short note. There are no societies in the entire world where their economy operates purely like this. However, you will see this type of firm in all societies, but it doesn't cover everything. So just a note on that. So what is monopolistic competition? It is a type of market structure that has free entry, a lot of different firms, and the key for monopolistic competition is the idea of product differentiation. Now, in this type of system, firms have some market power, which allows them to alter prices so their price isn't directly efficient, but they don't have nearly as much power as monopolies because there is some competition within this market structure. But the key for monopolistic competition is the idea of product differentiation. And this is how a firm distinguishes itself from other competitors to get consumers to purchase or consume their product or service. And this is a great little graph just talking about the differences between competitive markets, monopolistic competition, and monopoly. So again, monopolistic competition is not a perfect competitive market, and it's not monopoly. It's a completely different type of market structure. So a great example of product differentiation are restaurants. So let's say you're going to a mall and you're hungry, so you go to the food court. So you've got about between 5 to maybe even 15 or 20 different fast food places. You'll have your typical burger places like McDonald's or Burger King. You may have pizza places. You may have Japanese food or Chinese food or Indian food or a deli or a hot dog place. And they're all within this one situation. Now, it's not a perfect competition because they're all selling different products. Now, they're all food, but they've differentiated it where some places are burgers and some are hot dogs, some are pizza, some are Japanese food, some's Indian food, some are sandwiches, some are gyros. You might have a falafel place. And so they've all slightly differentiated their product, even though they're all selling the same good, which is food. Sometimes product differentiation can also be location. Whereas I can differentiate my product because, hey, you can buy from me or you can drive 20 minutes and buy from another place. There's also an aspect of quality, and I love restaurants for this example. I can spend 5 JD to get a meal at McDonald's, or I can spend 500 JD and get like steak and caviar and lobster. But it's still all the same good. It's still food, but it's been differentiated. That's monopolistic competition. So how do you find the price point in a monopolistic competition? It's the same process as a monopoly. You find where the marginal cost equals your marginal return, you go up to the demand curve, and then you find the price. That's the price that you charge. So again, there is some markup, but it's not nearly as much as a monopoly because you have some competition. But how much profit monopolistic competitive firms make or lose depends on how many firms enter or exit the market. If I have less competition, I can still have that differentiated product, but more people are coming because they have less options. But if I'm in a food court and there were 5 restaurants in that food court, and all of a sudden there were 50, I'm not making as many profits, even though I have a differentiated product, because there are more options for people. Now, in the short term, monopolistic competition can earn profits or losses based on that entry and exit, but in the long term, what you want as a firm is to have your price of goods match your average total cost, so you're breaking even. So what this will do is this won't cause any firms to enter the market or any firms to exit the market, so you'll have stability and you can consistently say we will make this much, we will have this much revenue based on our total cost, so you can continue running the business. That's really what you want. Now what you're saying is, wait, then I don't make any money. You have wages and salaries and things like that. In the long run, profits and losses are not possible, same as a competitive market. So let's talk about a profitable and a non-profitable monopolistic competitive market. So again, you find where your marginal return equals your marginal cost. You go up the demand curve, that's your price point. Now notice, at this point, the average total cost is right here. So this rectangle is where your profit is. So you are making a small profit in the short run. Maybe let's say you're running a food court, a fast food business, and you have more businesses come into the food court, so there are more options. Well, now you're going to run at a loss. So you're going to find where your marginal return equals marginal cost go up the demand curve. But because the demand curve is shifted to the left, your average total costs haven't changed, and then you're experiencing a loss. Now, ideally, what will happen is then some fast food places will go out of business, and you'll be able to bring your prices back up, which will stabilize everything. So in the long term, what you're going to have is when you take your marginal return, you find marginal cost, bring it up to the demand curve, what's eventually going to happen is that price point is your average total cost, so that over the long term, you can consistently stay in business, pay the wages of your employees, buy all your products, put in some money to expand. You want to just keep going as a business. So what are the differences between a monopolistic competitive firm, a competitive perfect competition market, and a monopoly? So let's talk about the differences between a monopolistic competition and a perfect competitive market. In monopolistic competition, those firms have some market power, which allows them to charge slightly more than you would in a perfect competitive market because of differentiation. Now, this is called markup. Now, how markup works is this is the difference between the price that your business charges for that fast food good and the marginal cost of production. So you're going to have a slightly higher markup, so that price isn't totally efficient because you have some market power with your differentiated product. In a competitive markets, the price is always the lowest possible average total cost because everyone in that particular type of firm is selling the same goods. So you can't have a markup, so no one's going to go to you because everyone's selling the same sandwich or the same hot dog or the same slice of pizza. So in monopolistic competition, the prices are slightly higher, but average total cost is slightly higher as well. Now, why is average total cost sometimes higher? Advertising, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So this is a graphical representation between a competitive market, perfect competition, and monopolistic competition. There are two primary differences between the long-run equilibrium in monopolistic competition and a competitive market. First, monopolistic competition produces markup, which can be seen here, because the price is greater than your marginal cost. In a competitive market, your price equals the marginal cost. Second, the output in monopolistic competitions is smaller because of the efficiency scale. In a competitive market, the firm's output is equal to the most efficient scale. So another main difference between monopolistic competitive firms and perfect competitive markets is the idea of excess capacity, which happens when a firm produces at an output level that is smaller than the output level needed to minimize average total cost. So you're not producing as much of that product as you could, and the reason why is you're trying to keep prices higher. So you don't supply as much of your product to keep the prices higher, so demand will slightly be higher. It actually increases your marginal return. So monopolistic competition produces a higher price and a lower output than competitive markets. That's a basic summary. That's the difference between a monopolistic competition and a competitive market. So monopolistic competition firms are really not efficient because, again, you're not finding that perfect price between supply and demand. You're going to have slightly higher prices and markup. In monopolistic competition, there's more differentiation by the product, which is where your excess capacity will be. The more differentiated your product is, you're going to have larger excess capacity because you want to charge a higher price so that you can have a stronger demand. So for instance, a great example of a more differentiated product is if I'm selling special gourmet food, I can really charge a higher price for that, so my excess capacity will be slightly less, which will drive the price up. If there was any regulation to lower the prices by a government, the firms would exit the market and then there would be less differentiation. So you don't want as much government interference because that's going to create less competition. Firms are going to exit the market and you're going to have more of a monopoly situation depending on where this is. So in this particular graph, we're looking at the differentiation. We're looking at product differentiation, excess capacity, and efficiency. So how does this look in a graphical format? So we have firm A and firm B here. Firm A enjoys slightly more product differentiation, and as a result, it has more excess capacity, so it can charge a higher price, and is less efficient. So efficiency is here, where your average total costs are the lowest, but you are going to charge a higher price. You're going to have less of that supply, and so this is the quantity that you're supplying. Firm B sells a product that is only slightly different from its competitor, because here's where efficiency would be at ATC's lowest point. So you're just selling it at a slightly less much of a quantity. And in this case, consumers only have weak preferences about which firm to buy from. So consumer demand is a little bit more elastic, because we can see that the demand curve is becoming more horizontal. So that's knowing that's becoming more elastic. So the results are a small amount of excess capacity and a little bit more efficiency. So if you're a firm, how do you know how differentiated your product has to be? Well, it depends on the environment that you're in. So as I said earlier, the average total cost that you're going to have in a monopolistic competitive firm is going to be higher than if you're in a perfect competitive situation. And the reason why is advertising. And the reasons why firms advertise, and you see fast food advertisements all the time, is to draw additional demand for the product being sold. So hey, the McRib is back, or there's a new type of spice at this fried chicken place, or ooh, they're doing a new type of pizza. And they advertise hoping that it will shift the demand curve to the right and will alter its shape, that it becomes more inelastic. Now, why do they want it to become more inelastic? They want you to have, it will become more inelastic so that way you have product loyalty and you will only buy from that firm. So what they're hoping is that advertising creates loyal customers and the demand curve becomes more inelastic, or actually, because you're looking this way, it should look like that. And this is going to increase the prices you can charge because your product is becoming more inelastic with advertising. Now, it's not equally productive in every single structure. So monopolistic competition is where you advertise the most because you have to try and get more people into your firm to create product loyalty, to make your good more inelastic so you can charge higher prices. That's why if you have a really successful restaurant that you have a consistent consumer base coming to, you can start to raise your prices because you have a loyal consumer base. You have product loyalty. Competitive markets really don't advertise because you're selling the same product as the guy across the street. So the only way competitive markets can advertise is if that entire product is advertised. So if it's industry-wide, that's sometimes you'll see, I was in Australia and I was watching a commercial on TV and they were selling, what was it? It was corn or something like that. And I'm like, why are they doing just a product advertisement for corn? And the person I was with said, you have no idea how big the corn industry is here. They want people to buy more corn. Not one store selling corn. Everyone who sells corn wants corn to be bought. Monopolies rarely advertise because you have no competition. What's the point in advertising? Because there's no competition. They might if they're trying to get more consumers and sell a new product, but really there's no point because they have no competition. They sometimes do it to increase demand, though. Now, there are some downsides, like rising costs, or you could put out an advertisement and it doesn't work. Now, advertising costs are always reflected in your average total cost, which is why I say a monopolistic competitive firm has higher average total cost than a perfect competitive firm. So here's an example of what a firm hopes advertising will do. So you have the demand curve becoming more inelastic, it's becoming more vertical, and they're hoping that the demand shifts to the right so that they can charge higher prices, as you can see here. So instead of charging this price with advertising, it becomes more inelastic, more consumer loyalty, charge a higher price. Now, ideally, by advertising, a firm hopes to increase your demand or your quantity from, here's another example, point 1 to point 2. So the demand curve shifts to the right, and then you can actually have lower, even though your ATC curve is higher, you might be able to make more money by having a lower quantity. In this scenario, the increase in demand from quantity 1 to quantity 2 is large enough to create economies of scale, even though advertising causes the long-run average total cost curve to rise. So even though your average total costs are higher, if advertising is effective, you're actually going to have lower costs overall. Because monopolistic competitive firms each advertise, the advertising efforts can actually cancel each other out and just make the market balance as if no one was advertising. And as a result, your long-run average total costs rise without demand increasing. So you'd have a situation where you're going from point 1 to point 3. So your average total costs have actually increased dramatically, which is the opposite of what you wanted. So that's why it's a risk to sometimes advertise. Well, that's monopolistic competition and the role of advertising for you. Hope you learned something you didn't know before. Enjoy the food court. Thanks for watching.